Hey, welcome. This is the Genesee County Compassion Club Show. I'm your host, Jeremy, back in the studio here at allpointstv.com. What's going on? Got John, made it in here.
First day of spring, I think it is, isn't it? Or supposed to be?
Yeah. So you walked through the rain to get here today, didn't you?
Yeah, well, I was walking around anyway. But it's always, besides,
in the city.
You would be surprised how much of a time we have rain or some other type of precipitation. It's depressing. Yeah.
A lot of people think of like, Hawaii or Oregon, places where it's known for raining a lot. But like Michigan has like one of the cloudiest, overcast, amount of days out of the year. I think we're like towards the higher end of things.
Yeah, because I know that University of Michigan had to move their observatory out to Arizona because there's so many cloudy days.
Cloudy days?
Yeah, just couldn't see through it,
Well, it's another cloudy day, but it is the first day of spring, so that's awesome. It's good stuff. That's why we got our little sproutling going on behind me. It's that time of year, time to get them seeds, your beans cracking, if that's what you're planning on doing as an outdoor grow this year. I mean, it's already that time, folks. It's time. I know some folks might say it's a little early, but early is better than late. You know what I'm saying?
But now, would you do? You would plant outside, or would you do like in a hothouse situation, or a?
Well, if I was going to garden outside, right now I'd be trying to get some seeds germinated, get them started, because that process can take a week. It can take 2 weeks. It can take longer. I mean, so when you start adding on the weeks of every little stage of a plant. And if you have intentions of having a really hardy plant, something that you can put outside at the end of May, and it's already going to have some, structure and size to it, maybe 3-4 foot off the ground. I mean, you're going to be transplanting it, so it's going to shock it at that time. And, there's another thing too, taking a plant that's indoors and then moving it outdoors. The sun's a lot more powerful than, our indoor lights. So you have to harden the plant. So you want to move it out for a couple hours the first day, and then bring it back inside, put it back underneath the lights, and then the next day you take it out for a little longer, and you keep going longer and longer and longer until you can finally just leave it out there for the entire time. But all of those processes take a while. So yeah, I mean it's not too early to start. It's not too soon to get some seeds, and get them germinated. So, and if you're just watching a podcast and you're like, man, he's right. Well, see, there you go. You're going to be going and looking for seeds. You make a purchase. By the time you get them in a cup with some water, it could be next week already. So don't let time pass you by. All right. And same thing for your veggie gardens. If you're doing seeds and sprouting all your own stuff versus, buying the plants in May, it's pretty much time. So spring is upon us. It's not a bad thing, right? Hopefully it'll be warmer soon. It already feels a little warmer. It's like 40 something. Today.
Yeah, 40. I talked to people in the Philippines. They said they would never even know how to deal with 40-degree weather.
They would probably have death.
Yeah, they would. A large portion of their animal population. Yeah,
I bet people would get sick. You know what I mean? Like 40 would just be ridiculous. It'd be like 120 here, or 110.
Seen that happen though before. We got the land of extremes here, but no, I've seen like 103, I think, before.
I know it's been over 100. That's for sure. Well, it's been hot down at the soup kitchen. We had our soup kitchen yesterday. Thank you for everybody who came up and volunteered. Really appreciate it. You guys served it up yesterday, and I know the guys that take part. We really appreciate you. Thank you. We have our Adopt a Highway coming up. That is going to be April, check my date here, 13th. See, Patrick got a post up on the Facebook page. You can check this out, M13. We meet at the club at 9 a.m. and then drive out there. If you live on that side of the county, because we do realize that, it is the other side of the county, M13. If you live out there, you can meet us out there 10 a.m. We'll be there cleaning. But between Beecher and Potter Road, I think that's Pearson and shoot, I can't remember the name of it. Shaftsburg Road. It switches names once you go on the other side of the road because it's on the county line. But anyways, just north of Lennon out there, M13, Lennon and Linden. You guys know where it's at. We've been cleaning this thing for like 10 years. This is our 10th year anniversary, I believe, this spring of cleaning this road. So, and spring takes a little bit more because you had the entire winter of garbage to collect. So we definitely could use some hands out there. It's the weekend before April 20th, before our 420 party, so it won't, interfere with you guys there and your preparations. Again, April 13th. So if you could mark your calendars, that's our Adopt a Highway. It's coming up this spring, and we definitely could use your help. You do have to be 18 years of age or older. You don't have to be a club member to help us clean the highway, but we'd like you to be a club member. But anyone 18 or older, welcome to join us and help out. We definitely appreciate it. It's a chance to continue to be a positive force in the community, and we're proud of it. So let's keep it up, keep it going. The picture I'm looking at, man, I don't know what from year that was, but there was a lot of people there that year. It'd be sweet to see a big turnout like that this year. It definitely goes quick. So, all right, Adopt a Highway. We got some other events coming up too. We have our softball league starting up here in May. It's coming up soon. Still time to sign up for that if you're interested. Also, we have golf league going on. So you can check out that stuff at the club. Ask one of the employees there, or George about the golf, or Abby about softball, or George about golf, or Charlie. But just ask around if you really want to play. Let us know. We'll try to get you in there. We'd love to see everybody participate and get as many people from the club as we can. These are our club teams. We love it. So softball and golf, man, get your stuff out. Get stretching. Start doing some exercises. Get ready. All right. Another big event we got coming up here, 420. Hello, 420. Obviously, I mentioned that, but it is a Saturday. It's going to be epic. We've got our posters made. I just got to see them yesterday. They look fantastic. It's a circus theme, like I've mentioned before. We're going to have performers. We're going to have Reverend Right Time and the First Cousins of Funk, along with other musical guests. And it's going to be a blast. Tickets are $20. We definitely want to see you there. It's our 10th one, or 11th one, excuse me. And I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a ball. So 420, you got to get down to the club. It's going to be awesome. And let's see. Oh, yes, I got one more event I want to mention. This is the Michigan Caregivers Cup. And this is a really cool event. It's going to be in Birch Run. It's an all-weekend event, June 21st, 22nd, and 23rd. And basically, it is a Michigan Caregivers Cup. That's what it's called. It's the name of the event. There's going to be a cup, obviously. It says for more info, you can email Michigan Cannabis Caregivers Cup at Gmail. So pretty simple. Email those guys if you're looking for vendor space, or maybe you want to compete, or maybe you just want tickets. You can get tickets for this event at the club. Just see George. And let's see here. We got Cannabis Corner Blazing 420. You know who those guys are. They're up in the club every day making it happen. But that you can get your tickets there and get more information there as well. But this is going to be a stellar event. I've heard that there are going to be a bong load of musical artists. There's going to be camping. And it's relatively inexpensive. So you can check out the prices on these cards if you see them around. You can get one of these at the club. They got VIP tickets, general admission, camping, whole bits. There's showers and so on. So it's not just, pop a tent, but you will be popping a tent. But anyways, this looks like a lot of fun. So check this out, Michigan Cannabis Caregivers Cup. And again, that is June 21st, 22nd, and 23rd. You want to get your tickets in advance for that. You can get them at the club. See you there. All right. Good stuff. All right. Let's jump into the news. We've got some things I wanted to go over with you. There have been some items that have occurred here in Michigan we want to talk about. A couple other things as well. So let's dive in. All right. We've got a few things. The first thing I want to talk about is this bill that has been written. And I find it interesting. First of all, I'm going to break this down because you really got to take a look at the little details. You guys know I like the small details. But at any rate, this bill, it has been written. It has not yet been technically proposed. What I mean by that is, usually when I talk about a bill here on the podcast, it's already been introduced to the legislature, which means that it has sponsors. It's been officially written and submitted to the legislature. And now it's either waiting in committee to be heard, to be talked about. It might be waiting on a vote from the a particular body, either the entire body itself, meaning the Senate or the House of Representatives, or maybe just a committee. But these are all different stages that bills have to go through. So if you go back to the 70s, Schoolhouse Rock, what is a bill? Just explain some of that process. But at any rate, the first step is writing the bill, right? And this bill has been written, and it doesn't have a number to it because it hasn't really been introduced, and it doesn't have any sponsors from our legislature as of yet. All that has been done has been written. So, lobbyists and attorneys, they get together and they write bills all the time, and then they can look around for someone in the legislature who says, oh yeah, I like that, I'll put my name to it, and then they start running with it and trying to sell it to all of your other legislators in a sense. But anyways, this bill here was written by, I'm assuming, lobbyists, And essentially, you know, they're looking for some changes already to the Michigan medical marijuana program. They're looking for changes to not just that, but changes to the recreational law. They want changes to the MMFLA as well. So it's kind of a far-fetched proposal. First of all, we have to understand a few very important things about our current laws before we talk about changes. All right. So the first thing is 2008 medical marijuana law, the original medical marijuana law. It was passed by the people through a voter-initiated ballot proposal. So because of that, it requires a 3/4 majority in the House and the Senate in order to get this bill to pass, in order to change anything about that bill. All right. So, i.e., if we're talking about eliminating caregivers, you can't do that unless you change the law itself, because they're written into that portion of the law. Same thing goes with our recreational law. So the rights that were provided in that section there, they were voted by us, the people. It was proposed by us, the people. Therefore, it'll take a 75% majority in the House and the Senate in order to change anything about that recreational law. So, like, for instance, the micro farm section of the bill that has yet to come to fruition, it does exist. We can demand that if the state didn't produce it in the future. And in order to not have that exist, you'd have to change the law. So this bill that has been written and proposed, and it has a lot of different things that they're proposing to it, it would require a majority. All right, so it would require a majority, a 3/4 majority, 76%, in both the Senate and the House to have a change. Now, before I get into the details and so on, one of the things I thought was interesting, our current Senate minority leader in the Senate is Representative Irwin from Ann Arbor. He's been a longtime supporter of medical marijuana. He's been down in the trenches. He's met people like myself and with other people from within the industry, patients and caregivers specifically. So he deeply understands the needs of all of these people. And he also has a good understanding of the corporate interests that are involved in this industry in this state as well. And his comments about this bill that have been written were, first of all, he sees right through the wool, and he called out the fact that this looks like it was written by corporate interest and said so. The other thing that he mentioned is that right now the current attitude of the body of legislature that we have about marijuana is kind of like nil. In fact, his words about this particular bill ever having a chance of passing were that it has a small chance to zero chance of getting through. And the reason he stated that is simply because, look, we just got done passing a law here in November. It just got on the books in December. 2 years prior to that, we had a law pass. So we've had plenty of laws already go through our legislature, and really our legislators are kind of done with marijuana for a while. They don't want to hear about it. So you may hear things like this pop up in the news, and you may hear things pop up in the future. They're going to be proposed as a bill. You might even see certain legislators sign on to it and sponsor it. So it might gain a little bit of traction. But in reality, I don't think the legislative body, at least in this legislative session, meaning 2019, is going to have anything to do with marijuana. I think they don't want to deal with it. They're done with it, done talking about it. Just let it be is the way that most of them feel. Let the state have time to work out things, get things in process before we start worrying about how to change it. And I would have to wholeheartedly agree with that sentiment. So at any rate, the bill that has been written, it has some vicious things in there like eliminating caregivers altogether. It has reinstituting taxes on some medical patients. And the other thing I thought that was interesting is the people that were proposing this bill were trying to say that it was somehow advantageous for certain groups like African Americans, and it would somehow provide them a greater opportunity to participate in the industry. And I personally fail to see how charging someone an additional fee to enter an industry is any way, shape, or form going to be advantageous for them to get into it. If people aren't able to enter it into it now, when the fee could be as low as $25 for someone to become a caregiver, how on earth would it be more feasible for them to pay a $250,000 fee or a $25,000 fee? just it doesn't make sense at all. So I guess where it's coming from, it doesn't seem to be genuine. The people who are proposing this, they put these reasons out there of why they think this needs to happen, so on and so forth, and it really is just sort of a veil to cover up the fact that they just want more money. They want a less competitive market for themselves, and they want a greater market coverage for their own corporate interest. So I think it's pretty clear, and I think I'm not the only person who sees through this. It seems like this is being echoed by a number of different people in the medical marijuana field, in Michigan, in the industry, but also people like our Senate Minority Leader, Jeff Irwin from Ann Arbor. So that's good. I'm glad that people are able to see through the wool. We're going to continue to see more stuff like this be thrown at our faces from corporate interests who really want to sort of clamp down the market because they realize that there is competition, and rightly so, there should be. So, all right, I'm going to move on from that subject nature there. Let's see what I can pull up here. Lost my page. Damn it. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the new licensing. You guys are all aware that the governor disbanded the Medical Marijuana Licensing Board. So let's get into that. This article here is from the Detroit Free Press. And basically it's just going to give you the nuts and bolts of what's going on. So when the board meets Thursday, which I believe is going to be tomorrow, they will be able to consider 128 business applications. It'll be one of the last times that there will be a public vetting of people who want to grow, process, transport, blah, blah, blah. On April 30th, a new state agency within the Department of Licensing and Regulatory Affairs, LARA, is expected to take over licensing for both the medical and the recreational marijuana markets. Under Gretchen Whitmer's order, the current existing licensing board will no longer exist. So, anyways, the reason I'm bringing this up, we've talked about that. There could be good and bad to this, and I'm going to tell you why. The new agency will basically be making their decisions behind closed doors. So this public vetting that you've been seeing going on for the past almost 12 months now, that's done. They're going to do it one more time, and then whoever is left beyond that point, it's all going to be done in this new process. So while certainly the board didn't do anybody any favors, having things done in public seems to be a safer way to go for most people. That might not be the case. I mean, we may see a more fluid application process from the state. We may see a higher approval rating from the state. These are all things that we're hoping for, but being that it's going to be all done behind closed doors, we have certainly no guarantees. It says the new agency will be required to hold 4 public meetings a year to discuss regulation, but any discussion of licensing decisions will come after those decisions have been made. It says here, we won't necessarily have that public discussion of every application, says Andrew Brisboe, who's the director of Bureau of Marijuana Regulation. A lot of that review of applications, as is done with every other regulatory program in the state, will happen in private by the analyst who actually review the applications. So Andrew does make a point. Every other type of application that you do through the state is done in this same manner, behind closed doors, according to a certain set of rules and regulations. And marijuana is going to become the same. So I think that could be a good thing. It's what it is what it is, right? You're not going to change it at this point. It says here, the board has only 2 meetings scheduled before it's disbanded, which is tomorrow, and then April 25th. The legislature has the ability to veto Whitmer's executive order abolishing the board before April 30th. Neither the House nor the Senate is expected to weigh in on the issue. So it looks like they don't really want to get involved. Senator Peter Lucido, who's been very active in the marijuana legislation, personally says, I've got no problem with it. That's where the licensing should have been all along. The board has had a hard time doing its job. Those are his comments. So good stuff there. I wanted to keep you guys abreast as to what's going on. Just a little bit more detail, basically, on the fact that the states, they were in charge, but now they're really in charge. All right. Here we go. All right. this here is something I want to share with you guys. It is along the lines of the House Bill 420, which I talked about in the past. This is actually a different bill, but it's pretty much the same thing. And this is possibly up for a vote next week in committee. And this is a federal bill, all right? But the bill is designed to protect banks that service the marijuana industry from being penalized by federal regulators. Let's see here. Co-sponsors, we have Representative Maxine Waters, Judiciary Committee Chairman Gerald Nadler, and Rules Committee Chairman Jim Govern have also all signed on to the legislation. So that's pretty good to have committee chairs signing on to legislation. Definitely demonstrates strong support, at least from the Democratic leaders. We'll have to see what the Republicans do. I'm looking for your actual changes to see what it's going to do. All right, the legislation clarifies that protections are extended to financial institutions that work with ancillary cannabis business, not just those that sell marijuana or marijuana products directly. Proceeds from a transaction conducted by a cannabis-related legitimate business shall not be considered as proceeds from an unlawful activity solely because the transaction was conducted by a cannabis-related legitimate business. Excuse me. They're calling it the Safe Banking Act. And so I was looking for a number. I apologize, but I don't see a number to this bill. Again, though, it's called the Safe Banking Act. It does have support from Representative Blumenthal, who's the guy who introduced House Bill 420, the representative from Oregon. It has representatives from Normal who sponsored this bill as well, and also different financial institutions, of course. But at any rate, they may take it up as soon as next week. Again, it's called the Safe Banking Act, and this is definitely something that we could use in this industry without a doubt. So, and again, it's going up for a committee vote, so it still has quite a long ways to get through the process. But we're continuing to see more and more bills address this particular issue at the federal level. Hopefully we'll see a change with that coming soon. All right, another thing I want to get on to sharing with you guys, if I can find it. Just waiting for my computer here. Apologize. It was on marijuana and psychosis. Here we go. All right, I think most people are aware of the fact that there are links between psychosis and marijuana. I think we've even talked about specific things like schizophrenia, and we're talking about daily use, heavy use. Sorry about that. So, I'm trying to find the nuts and bolts here, but here we go. So this is from CBS News. You can check out, it's available on quite a few other different sources today as well. Scientists estimate that people who smoke marijuana on a daily basis were 3 times more likely to be diagnosed with psychosis compared with people who never used the drug. For those who used high-potency marijuana daily, the risk jumped to nearly 5 times. It was paid for by funders including the Britain's Medical Research Council, the Sao Paulo Research Foundation, and the Wellcome Trust. It says, if you decide to use high-potency marijuana, you should bear in mind psychosis is a potential risk, says Dr. Marta D. Forti of King's College in London, and the study's lead author. She said it is unknown how frequently people could smoke lower-potency marijuana without raising the likelihood of psychosis, but that less than weekly use has appeared to pose no risk. Dr. D40 and colleagues estimate that in Amsterdam, about half of new psychosis cases were associated with smoking high-potency pot. Gage noted that it was possible that people with a family history of psychosis or other risk factors may be more susceptible to developing problems like psychosis or schizophrenia if they used cannabis. Some that could be the thing that tips the scale for some people. Cannabis for them could be an extra risk factor, but it definitely doesn't have to be involved. If you use cannabis, it doesn't mean you are definitely going to develop psychosis. So it is possible that people who experience psychotic episodes may be more likely to use marijuana. Gage points out an accompanying editorial to the study. DeForti and colleagues' study asked participants about their cannabis use prior to their first episode psychosis diagnosis. But it is possible that subclinical symptoms might have existed prior to cannabis initiation, meaning that associations in the opposite direction cannot be ruled out. So they are looking at both sides of the story here. It says more research is needed to establish a causal relationship and to figure out those who may be most susceptible to the health risk of marijuana. So it definitely is a potential concern, according to this report. I was actually just looking at some research earlier this week, and there's definitely a particular link between sleep patterns and specifically REM sleep with people who use cannabis. And it's been shown in different studies that cannabis actually will shut off that part of your brain's ability to go into that REM type sleep. And so that's why a lot of people who use cannabis on a regular basis will tell you that they don't dream or they can't remember their dreams. And this has been linked to this particular thing. The reason I'm bringing it up is that people who suffer from lack of REM sleep on a long-term basis have also been shown to show ability or a propensity for psychosis or schizophrenia. So maybe there's a link between the two is what I'm proposing. This is something to think about. If you have a family history of psychosis or schizophrenia, maybe you had an aunt and uncle or someone in the past, grandfather or whatever, maybe something for you to consider.
Maybe here's a theory too that I just want to throw out there. Maybe it's a person who uses it every day has like it's like a form of pikeism. Some kids would eat lead paint not because they wanted lead, but they were trying to get the calcium or something else. There's lacking in there. So maybe some people who gravitate towards using marijuana on a regular basis, high potency stuff, have tendencies towards these dysfunctions.
I think you're absolutely right. And John, the study here even alludes to that they stated that there may be some people out there who already had issues prior to cannabis use, and maybe they were already at risk for these diseases, and the cannabis wasn't really a factor. But at any rate, it appeared that it was a factor for some people, especially when it was high potency cannabis being used. And they're talking in the study here. It says chances of developing it by nearly 5 times. So for whatever that's worth, I mean, if your chance was 0 in the first place, it's still going to be 0, right? But yeah, I mean, I think you should know your family's history. You should definitely know your own body. And if you're experiencing, symptoms that you could potentially, I'm not an expert on this type of thing, but if you're having violent mood swings, maybe, uncharacteristic behavior, that type of thing, if you just feel like you need help, reach out to somebody. You know what I mean? I think that's the most important thing. Don't try to hide it. Don't try to mask it or push it away. Ask for help. You know what I mean? Seek out help. I'm
kind of curious, too, because a lot of times I knew people were smoking weed in school, marijuana in high school and elementary school, junior high. Anyway, but they always said, some people would say, well, I can't smoke because it makes me feel paranoid. Well, I always thought because, it was illegal and there was like a huge amount of possible punishment coming out of it, people felt paranoid from that. And when there's some people, I was just wondering, I was curious to know if that paranoia is actually diminished now that so many states have adopted, casual use laws or whatever, recreational laws rather. I was wondering if that diminished or is it still prevalent? I don't know.
I think that that's a good question, John. The paranoia. I mean, that's something that almost every person who smoked weed has been either told about or experienced. And I think there was a real common association with it being illegal, and that's why you're paranoid, because you just broke the law, and now everybody knows, and so on. I don't know that that's necessarily associated to the fact that it was prohibited in the past. I think the paranoia that most people experience, especially when they're first consuming cannabis and they're not really used to the effects of it and so on and so forth, I think that that's more associated with being more self-aware Cannabis does make you more introspective. It makes you more aware of your own actions and behavior, I think, for the most part. And I think that can double down on some people and make them feel more, if they already felt insecure, they may feel more insecure now because they're even more aware of themselves. And I have seen this in people, have the paranoia. I don't think it's because it was, they're running from the law or they're worried about the man coming to get them. Or maybe, their wife being mad because they smoked a doobie and whatever. But I think that the paranoia, I think the terminology is going to change in the future, John. And I don't know what the new verbiage is going to be, but I don't think they're going to continue to use things like paranoia. It's definitely an older saying. You know what I mean? Like when I was a kid, 20 years ago, maybe a little longer, paranoia will destroy you. Everybody knew that. You know what I mean? And you could say that to a young kid now, a millennial, and they've good chance they've never heard it before. Maybe they have. I don't know. But I think the terminology is going to change. I think that people will still have paranoia from smoking weed, especially if it's the first couple times they've ever gotten high. I think that's something that goes along with being high for the first couple times, is you're like, oh crap, I'm high. Especially if you're out in a public area, you know what I mean, where maybe not everybody else is high. It'd be kind of like being the only drunk guy in the room. Difference is that alcohol usually makes you lose your inhibitions, and suddenly you're the only drunk guy in the room and you're proud of it. You know what I mean? Marijuana is kind of the opposite. You feel like, man, I'm the only guy that's stoned here. Oh crap. So there is a difference there. And I think these differences need to be delved into further, because I think that, some things like this could be a negative where, certain people that have a past family history or maybe a tendency leaning towards psychosis, maybe they need to reconsider their cannabis use or how they're consuming their cannabis. Whereas like other things that are directly related to the same issue, like for example, dealing with people who are driving or in sports, competing in sports events, in looking at marijuana in a different viewpoint of saying, stoned drivers don't represent the same risk as drunk drivers. Now, I'm not trying to justify people who are stoned and make bad decisions in their vehicles, and I'm not saying that it's okay to be stoned behind the wheel, but there is certainly a difference in the behavior and the physical actions between someone who's high and someone who's drunk. And I think that paranoia thing is a part of the progression of people understanding of what marijuana does to a person, what the high is all about, and the reality of it. Because, the other thing that we've been dealing with is 70 years of bullcrap and people telling you, oh, you can hallucinate. It'll make you rape people. Just incredibly crazy claims about cannabis that are so far from the truth that we do have people out there that honestly believe that cannabis will make you hallucinate and do insane things, and they're comparing the side effects of maybe some other kind of horribly hardcore drug, like maybe heroin or something, and they're not comparable. So any more than alcohol is comparable to cannabis. So I think we need to continue to have education, but the progression is definitely coming along. And I do believe that a word like paranoia or the association with that, I think is going to change in the future. And it may be able to better address it. You might be able to say like, look, you're going to feel maybe a little bit more self-conscious when you smoke cannabis, if this is your first time or first couple times, or maybe it's the first time you've got high in a while, or maybe it's the first time you've dabbed. You've been smoking weed your whole life. Now you're going to hit that dab. Well, guess what? You're going to get high again, like you did the first time. I mean, it gives us a better opportunity to explain to the person before they do this what you might feel like. And I think paranoia is going to be a term of the past. So hopefully it will be. Hopefully,
I wonder if someone.
And rightly so. People in the past had a good reason to use that term because they were right. If they went out into public and someone identified them and said, "Hey, stoner, you just smoked weed. Give me the weed in your pocket. You're going to jail," and they very well likely could have been going to jail. So they had a reason to be paranoid. That's for sure.
I'd be interested. Maybe I could suggest to somebody at the college. I have some connections here at U of M Flint. Maybe I could see maybe some research or some kind of social research could be done on that, because to see the track that, to map that, see if that diminishes or whatever, that reporting that diminishes.
Certainly,
I'm just interested in that.
Yeah, and we're certainly seeing people's inhibitions go away. I mean, we're having more and more people who come in and I'm a patient now. I used it back in the old days. Hadn't used it for 20, 30 years. Now I found out, hey, this is actually good for me. I could really use this in a medicinal fashion. But along with that, they realize the old things are going to come back too. I'm going to get high again, and I'm going to feel goofy and relax. And, I'm sorry, but that goes along with this medication. It's a lot better than some of the other side effects you hear about for medicine nowadays. That's for damn sure. All right, moving on here. I wanted to talk a little bit about somebody that I usually don't like to talk about. That's the president. I just get sick and tired of hearing about politicians. But anyways, the reason I'm bringing him up is because he has proposed a new budget. It scales back restrictive language that prevented the city of Washington, D.C. from spending its own money to legalize and regulate the sale of recreational marijuana. The District of Columbia approved a ballot measure in 2014 that makes it legal to possess and grow small amounts of cannabis, but it left no mechanism for the retail sale of it. So anyways, the fiscal year 2020 budget requests Congress to revert to an earlier, less restrictive version of the language that leaves the workaround on the table as an option. Basically, they're cutting out a section that says you can't use funds for anything that has THC in it. So if they cut that part out and do their little finagling, then people can have a workaround, and the District of Columbia could have the ability or the authority to actually have legalized cannabis sales. So right now you've got a bit of a conundrum going on in the District of Columbia. It's perfectly legal to grow and to possess, but nobody can buy. It's kind of like what's going on here in Michigan right now for the interim period. And these types of policies are stupid. You know what I mean? Okay, so everybody can have it, but nobody can get it. Obviously, we're just trying to regulate things in the name of profits. But at any rate, looks like they're moving forward. So District of Columbia, maybe you'll see something change there in the future. Actually have a place to go get some meds while you walk around the Capitol. Wouldn't that be funny? Although I've been told, do not go into any federal buildings with your weed. Let's see, what else we got here? Talked about the new licensing, talked about the SAFE bill. I think that's about it. That's about it for today. Definitely want to make mention again of our 420 party, our Adopt a Highway, and of course the Caregivers Cup, and of course our softball and golf teams. Make sure you guys sign up for those if you can. And I think that's about it. So guys, get out there and enjoy your spring. Go buy some seeds. Go plant some seeds, germinate some seeds, whatever. Don't take them outside yet. It's still going to be cold for a little while. But anyways, we're glad the spring's finally here. I'm glad you're here with me. I'm glad you guys are down at the G3C. So let's keep making it happen. I think it's going to be a fantastic spring. Let's get to it, all right? Thanks for joining me this week, guys. Definitely appreciate it on allpointstv.com. Catch us next time at the Genesee County Compassion Club show or down at the club. See ya.